guys already. Every time I overhear your conversation, you're saying out loud the very thing I'm thinking. Where y'all from? Well, that must be confusing to have the sojourn in your name and then not be a sojourn church in the city, right? That's a different one. It's going to take a whole name.
Well, we don't have that problem out there.
That's right. They don't know who it is, right? They have no idea who they. Yeah. Well, that's probably for the safest. Are there a few sojourners? There's like a kind of a small network of churches called Sojourn. So Sojourn Heights, Sojourn Montrose. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's right. It's really hard for them not to answer my questions. It's also hard to walk away up here.
No, that's my stuff over there. I'll set it down.
Hey, hey, hey. If you have an empty seat next to you that is not, you're not holding it for someone, raise your hand so the people standing can see. Oh, okay. We've got a couple over here. So if you're in the back and you're standing, you do not need to stand. We do have more chairs, which we will put out. But first, I just want to fill in what we have. Don't be shy. There's going to be Republicans and Democrats up here, so you'll have an ally depending on. Oh, Mark says the AC is better in the front. So this is where the Lord is. Nobody from the back wants to come up front? Thompsons, Ranhels, nobody? Okay. Well, okay. We are going to go ahead and get started. So welcome to Theology by the Pint. Guys, we're so excited you're here. I think something is going to happen tonight that I dare say won't happen anywhere else in America, but at least not in Houston. Maybe I shouldn't dream quite so big. We are going to have very dissenting opinions about politics and theology, and we're going to have a sense of humor about it, and we're going to agree that we love Jesus and we want you to know him too. Real quick, can I get some of our volunteers, like, I don't know if Max or Levi or Dave or Ken or anybody can maybe help me with some chairs, because we need some extra chairs. Raise your hand again if you have spots next to you. We've got 2 up here. I feel like a flight attendant. Please do put your baggage in the first one that you see. It is a full flight. We've got a seat. No, not that one. We've got 1 over here. Come fill them in. 2 over here. Ron Hells, you can come here. Okay. And we will get some extra chairs. Are any of my volunteers in here? They're all actually working somewhere. Really? You know where they are? Of course you do. You go here. They're in here. Thank you. Okay. Anyway, what I was saying was, if you're new to Theology by the Pint or you haven't been here in a while, we like to have people, here we go. We're started, y'all. This is it. If you can hear the sound of my voice and you're voting for Trump. No, I'm joking. But just like quick show of hands. No, but quick show of hands if you feel pretty confident that you know that you are going to vote and you know who you're voting for. Okay, that's pretty much almost everyone. Quick show of hands if there's any wiggle room that you might have your mind changed tonight. Okay. Look at these open-minded people. This is so fun. That's so much pressure for our guest speakers. Okay. Okay. If I have to separate you guys, I will. All right. But at Theology by the Pint, here's what we like to do. We like to get people together that disagree about things so that we can talk about them and you can hear in real time the arguments on one side or another of whatever the topic is we're talking about. So tonight it happens to be politics. Next time we get together, we're going to be talking about gender and identity. The one in January is going to be about like IVF and birth control. We're doing all kinds of juicy stuff. So a little bit about tonight. I recognize that not everybody in this room is religious. Not everybody in this room is a Christian. We have people that have been going to church since they were babies. We have people in here that are atheists and everyone in between. I love that all of you guys are here. And we are all going to kind of do this thing together. Here's how the night's going to work. We've got 2 guest speakers that are going to come up, a Democrat and a Republican, that are going to give you their spiel about why they're voting the way they're voting and why they think you should too. Okay, then we're going to take a little break, get another beer, use the restroom, and when we come back up, our full panel will be up here to answer your questions. So as you have questions, text them into this number, and then I will throw those up to them as they come in. The sooner they come in, the more likely they are to get answered. But a couple housekeeping things first. Let's see. You guys already got the red cup, blue cup. That does not correspond to political parties. It just happens to be. Otherwise, all single people would be Democrats, and I'm sure there's a joke there, but I'm not going to touch it. You also have in your seats, you have a paper that has various things where we want you to respond. When you're done with that, either at the break or at the end of the night, there's a little basket on your way out by the elevator. Just turn those in. We have a follow-up conversation a week from tonight where we have a lot of fun kind of answering some of the questions that came in and didn't get answered. It's a smaller crew. It's a little more intimate. So let us know if you want to come to that. And then the last thing before I call up Paul and LCI is, if you didn't know, we have a podcast. It's called Theology on Air. And some of our episodes, we actually talk about political headlines and that kind of thing. Those are our white pill radio. But we also just started a new initiative, Everyday Theology, where we're having regular Christians that are in the city as doctors and lawyers and construction workers and artists and NASA workers and you name it. And that's a lot of fun. So give it a listen. And if you know someone you think would be good on the podcast, come and tell us. Okay, I'm going to call up Paul if he's handy. Paul Sloan, there you are. Isn't he loved? What? Yes, we are. Thank you so much, Corey. I'll tell you guys about that at the end, but we're doing another politics one if you don't get your fill tonight.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, y'all, for being here. I'm really glad y'all are here. My name's Paul Sloan. I'm the teaching pastor here at Heights Church, and I'm a theology prof at Houston Christian University, teach Bible and theology. So I'm glad you're here. I know this is a fun event, but also one of those sorts of events where a lot of emotional and moral convictions are at play. So I hope we're here both prayerfully and with open minds and hearts. I'm grateful that y'all would spend your time with us to eat food, and I'm really grateful that Sarah and your whole team
You're part of that team.
I know, but I'm trying to distance myself from thanking myself.
Invite them to come on Sunday morning.
Oh, I will. I'm getting there. No, but yeah, like I said, I teach here at this particular church, Heights Church. If you are looking for a spot to worship or to serve or to learn, we do all the things that most churches do on Sunday mornings. We do Bible study at 10 o'clock, and we do our service at 11. And before that, at 9:30, we do coffee and donuts and that sort of thing. So if that's the sort of thing that interests you or you're looking for, we'd love to have you. And if not, I'm really and you're already plugged in somewhere else, I'm really glad for that. So thanks for being here. Afterward, I'll see you and just kind of talk to you. But I'm not part of the panel tonight. I'm just sort of hanging out. So if
Who will say tell us when we need that?
Well, everyone should have that in their vocabulary. So all right, good.
Okay.
Thanks, y'all. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Can I have my LCI folks up here? So every time we do one of these, come on up, we spotlight a different ministry here in Houston or somewhere that's doing really cool stuff. We're doing it a little bit differently tonight since we're talking about politics and we're giving the mic time to Republicans and Democrats. We thought that our ministry spotlight would be the Libertarians, kind of slice it down the middle or something. So I know that's not how it works. I hang out with Libertarians. I know everyone's cringing right now. They're not in the middle. But tell us a little bit about y'all.
Oh, I'm cringing the most right now, Sarah. Thank you very much. Hey, guys, I'm Norman Horn. You might have seen me a couple of months ago at the Nationalism and Patriotism panel, so I'm back in Texas once again. Proud to be here. Thankful to see all of y'all again. I'm the founder of the Libertarian Christian Institute. Our mission is to promote a free society by equipping Christians to learn about liberty and to advocate for it. And so I'm very pleased to be back here tonight, and Doug is going to be on the panel tonight, so you won't have to hear anything else from me from here on out. But we are here, we have a table, and Doug will tell you a little bit more about what we do in order to help teach people around. So, Doug?
Yeah, my name is Doug Stuart. I'm coming from Pennsylvania. Long way to get here. So I'm in charge of making sure that we have a lot of content, and we do have a lot of content. If you haven't visited our table, we have books. We have enough to not give out to everybody for free, but we can auction them off, and that'll help with the supply and demand. Anyway, no, they're free if you want to take them, so first come, first serve. But really important thing is we do a lot of podcasts. We actually have a whole podcast network called the Christians for Liberty Network, and there are hundreds and hundreds of episodes for you to listen to, whether it's if you're from a Reform perspective, we have the Reformed Libertarians podcast. We have the Protestant Libertarian podcast if you're a little bit more broad-based, and aren't tied into one little particular faith. We have the Biblical Anarchy podcast, and I'm the host of the Libertarian Christian podcast, which covers a lot of theology topics as well as topics that are related to faith and freedom and liberty. And yeah, so come see our table. And if you like what you hear from me tonight, you can come visit our table. Or if you don't like anything that these guys say and you're just not sure why, you come see our table.
So no matter what, wait, stay here because I need your eyes on the crowd because we're going to do a little trivia, okay? Whoever wins these trivia prizes, instead of coming up, we're going to ask you to go to their table at the break, and they're going to give you the magic. And it's not just a free book.
No, it's not.
Yeah. It's money you can spend and promote capitalism. Apparently you guys like that, right? Not gold bars. How hard do you think these trivia questions are? So here's what I need your help with. Okay. I'm going to ask the question. Guys, again, if I have to separate you, I will. Do not raise your hand to answer the question until I'm done asking the question, okay? If you see them raise their hand before, no. And if you're on the leadership team, you cannot answer these. Okay, 3 questions. First one is, goodness. Wow, sorry. In the spirit of theology by the pint, which U.S. president blew his entire campaign budget on 160 gallons of liquor to serve to potential voters? Okay, I saw Ellison, yeah? Nope. Okay, we're not just guessing here. No. No. No, okay. I mean, how many presidents are there? 46? No. No, but you're getting closer.
Is that Andrew Jackson move?
No, and didn't someone already say Andrew Jackson? Okay, this should have been multiple choice. Kelly. Yes, George Washington. It was apparently, if you have to say the crowd went wild, I don't think they did.
Anybody's worried? I had to look at her notes. So
Okay. This one's multiple choice, thank goodness. But if someone knows it before the multiple choice, that's great. What is the first reference in the Bible to separate nations? I see the hand back there holding the baby. I thought someone might say that. I don't think that's a reference to nations. I think that's a city. Sean? Genesis 10. Yes, Table of Nations, baby. Sean, go see them at the break. You won that one. Good job. Thank you for saying that. Wow, I really appreciate that. Mace Perez in the house, somehow getting his name out. This is great. Okay, that's the journey. It also meets here in the Heights. Okay, last question. This is a fill in the blank for me, so raise your hand after I start it. The book of Judges repeats a refrain over and over. Finish this line. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Ooh, I saw Nathan. Boom. That is it. If you didn't hear him, it was, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his or her own eyes. Exactly. So, all three of you, go see Doug. Yeah, it does say her. In the original Masoretic text, it for sure does. Maybe. Whatever. Maybe it was just the men that were sinning. Ooh. Okay. Thank you. Come in February, we're going to talk about, do women even sin? I'm joking. Okay, you guys are such an easy audience. I love it. All right, I want to tell you really quickly the questions that I asked our presenters to address tonight, so you know what you're getting ready to hear, and you can text in accordingly, and then I'm going to call Josh up. No, we're not talking about that. Okay, the front row is it's rowdy. I'm asking them to tell you a little bit about themselves, who they're voting for, do they think that Christians have a moral obligation to vote, a little history of how they arrived at their political stance, how their faith informs that, maybe the biggest weakness of their current party right now, greatest strength, and then to pick 2 issues or policies that are on the table right now that people are discussing and kind of give you their take on those. Does that sound good? We're going to have so much fun. Remember that we love Jesus? Even if you don't, we do. And we love beer. So without further ado, you ready? Guys, meet Josh, our Democrat for the night.
All right. Well, hi. Good night, everybody. My name is Josh Crawford, like Sarah said. I'm not going to answer all of these questions in order, but I am going to get to all of them by the end of this little speech. Obviously, I am voting Democrat. I'm voting for Kamala Harris. So I want to tell you why. Before we get into that, though, I do want to say that even though I'm going to be critical of Republicans tonight, I do not think that y'all are bigots. I do not think that y'all are fake Christians. Actually, I know, right? In fact, I actually think that we probably have a lot in common. We share a lot of the same values. We want the same things. We just see the world differently. But ultimately, for those of us in the room who are Christians, we are united in one spirit. And for the rest of us, we are all Americans. And I hope that we can find common ground on that tonight. So a little bit about me. I was raised conservative, but like a lot of progressives, I started becoming more progressive because I was asking a lot of questions that I couldn't really get good answers to. Like, why is it okay to punish people in God's name, but if we care for people in God's name using the government, then that's like socialism, which is bad, right? Why are we criminalizing immigrants and people who are homeless when those are the people that God calls us to welcome into our homes? And the conservative spaces that I was in at the time never really gave me a good answer. So I started looking for them on my own. I opened God's Word, and what I found there made me more progressive. And I'm not saying that, please hear me say, I'm not saying that to say that like you are wrong or a bad Christian if that's not what you got from the Bible. But there is this narrative that progressive Christians, we have compromised our faith and given in to cultural pressure. And so I want to make clear that I am progressive because of my commitment to God's word, not in spite of it. That said, let's talk some policy, yeah? So the economy, I know it's not very exciting, but this is the number one issue for a lot of voters, and this is what Trump really sells himself on, and so I think it's worth discussing a little bit. I'm not going to pretend that things have been great since the pandemic. Prices have definitely gone up since Biden took office. However, I don't think that it is any more fair to blame Biden for the global inflation caused by COVID than it is to blame Trump for the 12 million jobs lost because of COVID. Like, some of these problems we were going to face no matter who was in charge. And Biden has managed to bring inflation back down to 2.4%, which, when you look at all the other top economies still sitting at like 4 to 6%, I think that is a genuinely impressive recovery. That said, I don't think Trump's economy was as great as he claims. Even if you exclude COVID from his record, which I'm going to do for the sake of a good faith argument, there are a lot of problems with it. Number one, Trump failed to deliver on basically all of his economic promises. Compared to Obama's last term, inflation was higher under Trump, job growth was slower. He promised a GDP of 4 to 6%, but the highest he ever got was 2.9%, which was the same as Obama. He sent more jobs overseas by giving corporations a 50% tax break on foreign profits. And instead of bringing manufacturing back, his tariffs and the resulting trade war sent it into a recession. More than that, if we're thinking about this from like a Christian perspective, then having a good economy matters, but God cares way more that we have a just economy. And if you read the prophets, they are constantly blasting ancient Israel precisely because they were getting rich at the expense of the poor. Trump's policies, in my opinion, pretty consistently benefited the top 1% more than the average worker. He cut his tax cut gave 87% of benefits to the rich. He cost workers $1 billion a year in lost wages because of overtime restrictions. The wealth gap between the rich and the poor grew by 17% under him. And between 2018 and 2019, median income decreased by $2,000. We kind of forget because it got a little overshadowed by COVID, but we were kind of already headed into a recession before the pandemic hit. And when you take into account that Trump inherited a strong economy and Biden inherited, I can't say what I actually wrote down, but a global economic shutdown, it's clear, to me at least, that Trump was not only worse for the economy than Democrat administrations, but less fair to the average worker. And I believe the same holds true when you compare Trump to Harris. I'm not going to stand here and pretend that both parties aren't bought out by giant corporations, and I think we all know that politicians will say whatever they think will get them elected. But let's all just like pretend for a moment and, dreamland that each candidate gets exactly what they've, does exactly what they've promised. For Harris, that means lower taxes for the middle class, expanding the tax break on new businesses to $50,000, expanding the child tax credit to $6,000, and giving workers 6 months of paid family leave when they have kids. It means expanding the $35 cap on insulin to all Americans, and the same with the $2,000 cap on out-of-pocket medical expenses. It means prosecuting corporations that are price gouging us at the grocery store, landlords that are using rent software to fix rent prices, and it means getting the rich to pay their fair share by raising corporate taxes and raising the estate tax on people making more than $100 million a year so that they can't use like stocks and other investments to get around paying their taxes. For Trump, it primarily means corporate tax cuts, mass deportations, and more tariffs. So in case you're like me and you were on your phone the entire time in Economics 101, tariffs are taxes on imports that are paid for by the corporations importing them. And 9 times out of 10, this means the prices of those goods go up. So it's not China that pays for them, it's us. So if you're already concerned about how expensive everything has gotten, tariffs are going to make that worse. On top of that, the last round and the resulting trade war devastated manufacturing industry. It devastated our agricultural industry. There were more farms that were bankrupt or in debt in 2019 than there had been since 2011. So you can imagine what a 60% tariff on all Chinese imports and 20% tariffs on the rest would do. Practically every economist says that Trump policies would raise inflation, raise unemployment, and likely send us into a recession. Harris's policies, on the other hand, would continue to bring inflation down, continue to bring unemployment down, and create 3 million more jobs than Trump's policies would, while adding less to the national debt. So in my opinion, Kamala's policies are not just better for the economy, I think they are just more fair for the average American. I'm gonna take some water because cottonmouth is real. Okay, now let's talk about immigration. This section is gonna be a lot shorter. I believe that as Christians, we have a duty to welcome the immigrant. This means making the path to citizenship easier and giving more resources to our criminally underfunded immigration system so that it can work as effectively as it needs to. Oh, the cough is coming. All right. Look, I think that there are good reasons to have borders. There are definitely people that we shouldn't let into our country. But if I am looking for the heart of God in the policies that I support, then welcoming the immigrant must be part of that. God commands us to do so over and over again in the Bible. They are consistently named amongst orphans and widows as a group that deserves our special care and attention. And Jesus straight up says that rejecting the immigrant is akin to rejecting Jesus himself. I don't think that for Christians, this is optional. And I understand if you're worried about crime or the economy, like I genuinely think that those are valid concerns. But here are the facts. There is no migrant crime wave. According to the Border Patrol, 90% of the drugs that are smuggled into our country are through regular points of entry and mostly through U.S. citizens. Turns out that giving a baggie full of drugs to a desperate migrant and hoping for the best is not the most reliable method. According to the FBI, immigrant communities actually commit less crimes, commit crimes at a lower rate than natural-born citizens. And undocumented migrants are not killing hundreds of thousands of people a year. This year, they have only killed 27. And while every life is precious, I do not think that it justifies deporting an entire community that is statistically less dangerous than owning a dog. Okay, but what about the economy? Aren't they a drain on our welfare system? Again, not quite. On average, migrants consume 27% less welfare than natural-born citizens. Undocumented migrants don't even have access to the vast majority of welfare, because if you've ever applied for welfare, you know that they ask for every document that you've ever owned, and it's really hard to get access to that stuff when you don't even have a driver's license or a proper social security number. On top of that, undocumented migrants actually tend to put more money into our welfare system than they take away because the jobs that they work at require them to pay Social Security taxes, even though they're not going to benefit from that system. So again, I don't think that Harris is perfect on this. I actually have a lot of disagreements with her border policy. I think she's gone along with this migrant invasion narrative that does not reflect reality. And I wish she had more compassion for the people at our border who are desperate and starving and just looking to give themselves and their families a better life. But I also think that her policies are a heck of a lot better than the mass deportations that Trump has promised, which would not only be devastating to our economy, but create a humanitarian crisis that I don't think have seen in our lifetimes. Now, I know there's a lot of important issues like abortion that I don't have time to get into right now. I want to talk about it. I hope we will talk about it during the panel. I'm going to rapid fire these last few. Biggest weakness of Democrats, they spend too much time campaigning on orange man bad instead of substantive policy issues. Also, all my fellow Democrats in the room, let's be honest with ourselves, we can be pretty annoying sometimes. Biggest strength. Hey, there we go. Hey, look, common ground. That's what it's all about, man. Biggest strength, the current administration has actually been the most pro-union, antitrust administration that we've had since before Reagan, Biden is the first president in history to walk the picket line. I think that's pretty cool. Do Christians have a moral obligation to vote? I think Christians have a moral obligation to do justice, and I think that engaging in our political system is one way that we do that. And I think that we've all seen that Christians have the political power to make real change if we vote in ways that are just. So my hope for this election cycle is that we will begin to actually use that power to help the people, the poor and the vulnerable and oppressed that God calls us to care for, instead of getting wrapped up in culture war issues. At the end of the day, Scripture tells us that not everyone who says, "Lord, Lord," will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only those who do the will of the Father. And the will of the Father is to give food to the hungry, drink to the thirsty, to welcome the stranger and clothe the naked, and to care for the sick and imprisoned. Matthew 25:34-36. And it's my opinion that this is not always true, but for this election cycle at least, I think Democrats fulfill those values better. So, thank you. Go vote.
You know, normally I give this little speech beforehand and I forgot to, but you guys did it anyway, where I normally say things like, if you like something you hear, you can amen or woo, but don't boo. I could feel, especially on my row, I could feel the cringe from some people, like, but you kept it in, and I'm proud of you for doing that. I know we've got people on both sides of the aisle out there, so thank you for being respectful. Let's do it again for Mr. Trump. For Austin Freeman. Come on up.
You did not get the handout. Okay. All right, you got this, man. You can do it. Oh, you gave yours. Excuse me, one more time, sorry.
Why do you need my engaging theology book?
Oh, okay, all right, okay. I was like, this. I'm not asking. I was asking him. Like, he literally came. Yeah, I didn't ask him to do that. I know. That's fine. Okay. All right, we're good to go. Okay. You give me a 5-minute warning? Sure. Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Austin Freeman. I was raised in a middle-class family. Okay. I was raised on a cattle ranch in Waco, Texas, actually. And so I was surrounded by both Republican cowboys and Democrat cowboys on both versions of those things. Yeah, there were. So I don't want to consider myself beholden to any particular political party. I'm not a registered anything. I consider myself at the abstract to be an independent voter. It's just that the current Democrats make it very difficult to be an independent voter, in my opinion. I am allegiant to the kingdom of God. And I hope that's true of all of us in this room. There is only one king in the kingdom of God. But the king has, in fact, instituted other worldly rulers beneath him, and he tells us to respect them. As a Christian, therefore, I am called to live within the secular kingdom while advocating for the heavenly kingdom. Okay? Now, there is a compelling argument to be made that perhaps the best way to advocate for the heavenly kingdom is to forsake power in the secular one. But based on the number of hands that were raised at the beginning when we asked this question, it concerns me that it seems as if studies are showing that millions of Christians might not be voting in this election. I hope that that's something we can talk about in the panel, but based on the fact that I might be preaching to the choir here, I'm going to continue on and just ask this question. What are we doing when we vote? What are we doing when we vote? We are being asked what we think is best for the country given these options. Okay, and as Christians, our opinion about what's best for the country is that people should follow as closely as possible the will of God, right? Whether it is revealed, whether it is natural law, and then we ask ourselves, which party of the existing options best represents that? And the best thing to me seems to be to calculate which of the parties on offer make for the most effective action for love of neighbor. And I think this is where we're going to be in agreement. The difference is the method by which we achieve that common goal. James 4:17 says, "So whoever knows the right thing to do and does not do it, it is sin." We have privileged knowledge of what the most effective way of human flourishing is because God has revealed it to us in His Word. And so if I am asked, what should I do in order to create policies that are going to implement that flourishing? I believe, I don't know if I have an ethical obligation necessarily, but I do feel as if there is an ethical pressure in order to respond in a way that reflects my Christian values. I do think, actually, I really like the way that you say that we do have a moral obligation to do justice, and voting is a way to do that. I do think that in particular elections, in particular circumstances, silence is violence. But I will leave it up to you and your conscience. I don't want to bind your conscience in a way to say whether you are morally obligated to vote in this election. I'm just going to try to make the best case I can for why I think this is the most effective way to love your neighbor. So what's under debate here is which party is the better choice for a Christian, Republican or Democrat? Now, neither of them is the Christian party, okay? Neither of them is the Christian party. But as a Christian, I believe the most effective course of action to love my neighbor is to evaluate the policies that are put in place that are going to affect his or her life. And I evaluate them against the Word of God and against the natural law, and I make my decision on that. So I am voting for Donald Trump because I agree with the policies that he wants to implement. I am most decidedly not for Donald Trump because I like him as a person, because I see him as a role model, because I want to hear him talk more, right? I don't want any of those things. I look at the policies that he says he wants to implement, and I agree. Again, the official planks on the website, which should be on the handout that I gave you, both for Trump and for Harris, I don't agree with everything Trump wants to do, but in terms of the 20 or so planks on the website, I agree with all of those. And I also think that in his first term, Donald Trump was pretty good at fulfilling the promises to implement the policies that he said he was going to set out to do. And therefore, I trust him to do so again. In fact, I trust him more because he's told me that he's going to work harder at it and he's going to surround himself with more people that are not beholden to the deep state bureaucratic entity, but people that are looking to sort of challenge it and deconstruct it. Meanwhile, I have absolutely no trust that Kamala Harris is going to do any of the things that she said she's going to do. We can talk about the reasons why if y'all want to. What do I think is the biggest weakness of the Republican Party? The biggest weakness of the Republican Party is Donald Trump. Amen. Right? Trump is not a good person, right? So in my opinion, I'm not the judge or the jury, but I don't see Trump to be a very ethical person. I look across the aisle, I see that Kamala Harris is also an adulterer. I see that she also is a habitual liar, that she is a race baiter, that she is an alcoholic, that she's dictatorial. So there's a lot of things that could be said for both candidates. Neither of these are very fine people, if we want to use a very telling phrase. Okay. I often wonder how much of the crudity that we're seeing in modern politics is a result of a decline in our candidates' ethical standards, and how much of it is an increase in visibility because of Twitter. Okay? Maybe it's both. But, I mean, think about this. LBJ was a virulent racist, okay? But he passed the Civil Rights Act. Roosevelt was an absolute narcissist. His daughter tells us that he would like to be the bride at her wedding. Okay? JFK was a sexual abuser and an adulterer. Thomas Jefferson was not only an adulterer, not only a slave owner, but he literally cut parts out of the Bible in order to make his own religion. I am not, however, voting for a pastor. I do not demand that the secular world act like the Christian world. But look, when you explicitly come to me, secular world, and you ask me, hey, Christian, what do you think is best for my family and for my neighbors? That comes down to policy. And that's what I want to discuss. I think the greatest strength of the Republican Party, number one, is that there weren't any wars for those 4 years. And number two, the policies that you have in your handout. Of the 20 or 21 policies listed on the candidate's official website, I went through and tallied this. They agree on 11 of these policies in principle. So for instance, both of them want to end inflation, both of them want to increase American manufacturing, et cetera, et cetera. Now, they obviously disagree on implementation. They are directly opposed on 2 principles, which are shaded dark there at the bottom. And then the remainder, those that are separated into non-connecting columns there at the end of the page, those are just policies which don't have any direct correlation. So if you go through those, on the 11 policies on which they agree in principle, Harris's version is markedly worse than Trump's version. So for instance, she says she wants to end inflation by stopping what she calls price gouging and implementing price controls. And even the liberal economists will tell you that's how you get Venezuela, right? That is not a good thing to do. Also, by the way, the grocery stores are not price gouging. They have maybe 1% to 2% margins on their products. So it's just not in touch with what's actually going on economically. Of the 2 policies that they directly conflict on, I agree with Trump on both of those policies. I'm a conservative evangelical Christian. That's not a surprise. And then for the remainder of the disconnected, non-correlated policies, I support all of Trump's policies and none of the ways that Harris wants to implement her policies. Now, I might agree with a lot of those in the abstract, but not the way that she wants to go about making them happen. I also want to note, if we want to talk about honesty in this election, the official website of Kamala Harris not only blatantly lies about the things that Donald Trump advocates for. For example, if you look at this thing where, so these are the taglines on Harris's platform, but then they have like a little paragraph underneath that articulates what they mean. That's where I get the stuff in parentheses. They're saying Donald Trump is going to destroy Medicare. He's going to make all these cuts. He's going to do this or that. And that is directly opposed to what is on Donald Trump's official website about what he says he wants to do with Medicare. On every single one of these planks on Kamala Harris's platform, they tell us what she's going to advocate for, and then in red it says Donald Trump's Project 2025 plan. And I am shocked at this point that Donald Trump is not suing people for libel for continuing to associate him with something that he has repudiated on multiple occasions. Maybe we'll talk more about that. So what I see here is there is one side of the aisle which creates policies that in general I agree with. And then there's another side of the aisle that seems to be rooted in an absolutely pragmatic, power at all costs sort of mentality to the effect that, I mean, do you guys follow Kamala Harris's campaign Twitter by any chance? Just take a look and then open up the comments and see how many times they're actually just blatantly giving easily falsifiable information in order to manipulate voters. I don't like that. I want to love truth and goodness and justice. Now, is Donald Trump the best person to portray truth and goodness and justice? Well, his policies are. That's what I want to get to, is Donald Trump may not be a great person, but Donald Trump is not the only person we are electing into office. Who is running our country right now? We don't know. Did any of you vote for any of the people that are running the show? Okay, so the deep state is not Illuminati, whatever, behind closed doors. The deep state is just the entrenched bureaucracy that continues to stay there, that you didn't vote for, that you don't know what they're doing. The EPA is its own policing mechanism, for instance. They can do whatever they want. That's what the deep state means. So I see Donald Trump surrounding himself with people like RFK, with Elon, with Vivek Ramaswamy. I see people that seem genuinely interested with creating some real reform in the way that the United States operates on a federal level. And I think that's a real strength. I honestly think that that is the best way to love our neighbor, is to take away this authoritarian form of government ruled by bureaucracy, which oppresses people at a vast level, and put the power back into a democratic republic. Do you notice that the person that they say is undermining our democracy is the one who has a plank in their platform that says we need to strengthen our election system? Now, I agree with everything that my esteemed colleague over here is saying in terms of we need to prioritize a just economy, we need to prioritize humanizing people. The last thing I will say, and hopefully we can pick this up in the panel, is we need to draw a distinction between the church and the state. The church is ordered to love the immigrant. The church is ordered to love the poor. The state is not. We need to talk about that, because there's not an easy solution where we just dust our hands off and say, well, therefore we don't have to create a just political system. But I don't want to see virtue be forced on other people, because when you force people to do good, it stops being good and it starts being tyranny. So that's why I'm voting for Donald Trump.
First of all, thank you to both of you. You went like 12 minutes and 20 seconds. That was perfection. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break, get more beer, use the restrooms. The restrooms are down like the hallway down here. Wait. We've got our step and repeat over here with some props if anyone wants to take pictures. Talk to people with a blue cup. If you have a blue cup, make the magic happen. We've had people get married from meeting people here. It can happen to you. That lady right there walking, see? Oh. We are meeting back here at 8 o'clock. We're starting at 8 o'clock sharp. Go. let's make your way back in, and I need all my panelists, which means I'm missing Austin and Josh. You're not done. I need you back. Austin and Josh, ¿dónde están? All right. Surprisingly, I don't have as many texts as I thought I would have. I've got a nice chunk to start with, but keep sending them in. I still need a Republican and a Democrat. If they don't come, who wants to pitch hit? Pinch hit? Okay. I never know if it's pitch or pinch. It's pinch. Yeah, okay. Well, because you pitch in baseball. It's very confusing. Austin, Josh. Do we all need to, like, get back in here like they do at comedy shows? Okay, I see Austin. Josh on his way too? Okay. I guess I could tell a joke while we wait. Why can't you trust an atom? Because they make up everything. Okay, now a Democrat joke. I'm joking. Okay. All right. Y'all, there are stairs you can use, but.
Yeah, we are manly.
Okay, fine. Let me move this. While I'm waiting for Josh, let's all make fun of him when he gets in. Oop! Hi, sorry. Okay. I do want to let you guys know, if you don't get your fill of politics tonight, or if you just want to hear different people talk,
Some really good people that are going to talk at the other event.
Huh?
Some really good people are going to talk at the other event.
Yes,
Yeah.
really good. Okay, can I get your attention? Shh, shh, shh. Here we go. This is it. So helpful. Who tapped the mic? That's like hitting someone when they're coughing. Okay. On October 29th, so 2 weeks from tonight, we're going to rinse, repeat, and do this whole thing with a whole new cast of characters up in the woodlands. It's technically spring, but it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a little bit of a different vibe. We are capping it at 75 people because it's in a smaller space. And engaging theology. Are you just doing homework while we're here? Engaging theology.
It's his. He said I needed to play.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if you haven't yet signed up for that and you're interested, that's all on our website, theologybythepint.org. You can find about all of our upcoming events, but especially the October one, October 29th, Juan Carlos Martinez will be taking the conservative, they're not doing Republican, Democrat. That one is going to be a little bit more philosophical about how your faith informs the way that you engage the political sphere at all. But we are going to get into policy. So Juan Carlos Martinez will be taking the conservative role, and then David Hansen, who's a pastor up there at an affirming ELCA church, is going to be taking the Democrat perspective. And we have some doozies for the panel, so it's going to be good. Okay, I'm going to have you guys. We're sharing mics, right? I'm going to have you go left, and I had them sit as they are, so to make it a little easier when you're thinking about where they. Yeah. So I'm going to have you tell us who you are, maybe just like a one sentence, like what you do or whatever, and then if you are so bold, who you're planning on voting for. I know that's really hard for you. So, and I don't know your answer. So why don't you start us off?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Farthest to the left, my name is Cody Pogue. I'm a community college professor at a local area community college. I'm also on TikTok. If anybody wants to follow Cody Pogue, CODYPOGUE. And I'm voting for Kamala Harris.
And he has been on our podcast a couple times, and hopefully will come back. Oh, nice. Perfect. So I guess he's coming back.
Hi, it's me, Josh again. I'm a assistant youth director up in Dallas and recent alum of Perkins School of Theology.
I have a mic. My name is Doug Stuart, and I'm the CEO of the Libertarian Christian Institute. I also am a web developer and video producer, so I have my own company, and I am probably going to vote.
Probably. My name is Austin Freeman. I am the chair of the Department of Apologetics at Houston Christian University. I am also a professor of theology there. The views expressed are not necessarily the views of Houston Christian University. But in general, I think they are. Yeah, not necessarily in the case of who you should vote for, but in the case of social values. So if you like what you hear, then there are a lot of kindred spirits at Houston Christian University. And I am voting for Donald Trump because I am, in general, a traditionalist conservative.
Perfect. Share the mic. Okay.
I'm Evan McClanahan. I do the podcast, so you should all check that out, Theology on Air. I'm the pastor at First Lutheran. I also am not representing First Lutheran. I'm here in my personal capacity, so in case there are any IRS agents out there, calm down. I have a Donald Trump sign in my yard. I'm voting for Donald Trump, and unlike, I will disagree with Austin on this, I am not apologetic for him or his personality or his person, and I maybe could defend that at a later time, but that's who I'm voting for.
Okay, so we have a nice gamut up here, right? I feel pretty proud of putting this panel together. Okay, we're going to start with a question that actually the guest speakers already each addressed, so maybe we can hear from the other three of you. But the question is about this, do we have an obligation to vote? This person asks, do we have an obligation to vote? What do we do when we feel that all options are distasteful? And I'll just throw in the mix, I've heard just anecdotally from several of you that maybe you're not voting because of that. And so you hear people talk about, oh, well, the lesser of two evils, and other people say, don't waste your vote. And then some people say, I just can't in good conscience vote for either. What are your thoughts about obligation to vote, and what do you do when they're distasteful?
Well, I do think that we should vote. It's the easiest, most practical way that we can have a worldview, have a certain list of policy prescriptions that someone can help us enact sort of on our behalf. That's what a representative government is supposed to be. Are you obligated? No, I think you have Christian freedom not to vote. I think that would be a bad decision. And it is a two-party system. I kind of wanted to say that as well, so I'm glad that was asked. Whether you kind of like it or not, it is the way that it is. I mean, all the way down at the precinct level, if you want to, for example, work on election day as like a poll worker or something like that, you are either a Republican or a Democrat. So I'm sorry to the independents out there, you just don't have a say in the process. It's a two-party system. You can hope that it will change. You can work for change. I encourage you to do that. But at the end of the day, you have a choice between two people, realistically speaking. The Libertarian might disagree, but I think voting for a third party is a wasted vote. So I'm just very practical about that sort of thing. And yeah, sometimes you have to hold your nose. Austin said Donald Trump's not a good person. Well, no one is good, a wise person once said.
No, not one.
So that's the way it is.
Yeah, I'll take a little bit of a different approach. I think that as an American, you do have a civic duty to vote, to let your voice be heard. It's a government of the people, by the people, for the people, as Abraham Lincoln said. As a Christian, I don't know that it is our duty. I think our duty is to take the good news to the world, right? Jesus said, the Spirit of the Lord's upon me to preach the gospel to the poor, heal the brokenhearted, and that sort of thing. Didn't say to vote, right? And the reality is that in Jesus' time, voting wasn't even an option. The type of government they had did not really allow that under the Roman Empire. And so I don't think that's our Christian duty. And this is actually something that worries me a little bit. As a professor at a local secular college, I hear people talk. And one of the things I worry about is Christianity sometimes has become so connected with Donald Trump in our society that when you ask people, what do you think about Christianity, they don't associate it with Jesus. They associate it with Donald Trump sometimes. And I worry about that. If our calling is to go out and win the lost, and the lost associates Christianity with Donald Trump, they're getting a different message than what we're preaching, because what we're doing when it comes to politics, and that's something that I worry about. And I think tonight we did a good job of saying we don't support, Donald Trump's character and that sort of thing. But I do worry about that from a Christian perspective.
I'm going to move us on because now the questions are flying in. Oh my gosh, you guys.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay. I shouldn't have said I don't have that many. That was on me. I'm going to ask three questions that are all kind of related to each other. Here they are. The Republican made a point that you can't force virtue. How does that work with abortion? If you limit reproductive rights in that regard, is that not forcing virtue on people? Obviously, you can hear the slant there. From another slant, someone asks it this way. What's your candidate's position on the murder of preborn humans? How can a Christian give their vote to someone that would advocate for that? And then someone that said it more moderately, I'm trying to get all your questions in, said it this way. I am, this is hypothetical, pregnant or new parent or new grandparent, and I'm invested in my kids' or grandkids' future. Which candidate is more pro-child? Defend your stance with a few examples. So the question is about abortion. You've heard it from kind of three different slants. Go.
There is no true pro-life candidate in this presidential race. So the option that we have, as Evan pointed out, is to choose which of these people are going to be more in line with what we want, which of them actually did appoint the justices that overturned Roe v. Wade, which of them is going to allow for us to say no at a state level, and which of them is going to mandate that we say yes. In terms of, can we force virtue in terms of abortion? So there is a difference between forcing virtue and limiting vice. So the primary role of the state is to protect its citizens, and that includes the unborn. And therefore, the state is doing its God-given duty by preventing you from murdering your child. That is the just and proper role of the sword that the state holds. And that is ordained by God and not by me. Now, in terms of forcing virtue, to say we need to love the immigrant, we need to love the people that are less fortunate, I agree with all of those things. But if at the point of a gun, a federal agency is going to take your money, whether you want to give it or not, and force you to apply it to most of these federal programs, which are hugely ineffective in the first place, that's not actually making you generous or loving. That's not changing your character at all, right? There's a difference between a guy who is faithful to his wife because he loves his wife and a guy who is faithful to his wife because he's never had the chance not to be, right? So we want people that are actually virtuous, not people that the government is holding the gun to their head in order to cause them to be charitable to other people. That's the church's job. If the church were doing its job to love the migrant, if the church were doing its job to clothe the homeless, then I think we would have a very different conversation. And a lot of churches, by the way, are doing exactly that. Amen. The primary charitable organization in the United States are various forms of Christian organizations. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how we actually are loving these people right now.
So I kind of want to attempt to make the case that even if you are pro-life, you should still vote Democrat. Why? I know, right? Because statistically, the data bears out that abortions are actually lower typically under Democratic administrations than Republican ones. Because Republicans try to tackle abortion on the supply side by banning the process, right, as we've seen. And this doesn't seem to be very effective, indicated by the fact that abortions have actually risen since the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Now, why is that? Because one of the primary drivers of abortion is poverty. It turns out that when you are able to provide women with good career opportunities, good education, affordable health care and housing and child care, they are much more willing to keep and raise their child. The other way that significantly reduces abortions is by reducing unwanted pregnancies. 50% of all unwanted pregnancies end in abortion. And you do that through comprehensive sex education, through publicly funded family planning, by making contraceptives widely available for people. And these are all things that Democrats tend to push for much more than Republicans. In fact, there are some Republicans who are even talking about whether or not contraceptives should be legal right now. And so, in my opinion, if you want the moral victory of banning abortion, then vote Republican. But if you actually want to reduce the number of children who are aborted in sheer numbers, then Democrat policies have been proven to be much more effective.
I like to just basically, if we substituted the word abortion with slavery, see if the argument would still hold. So, we're talking about enforcing morality or something like that. All law is moral. All law is based on a worldview. All law has some kind of foundation that you think, is some objective reality that says this is right or this is wrong. So if it's wrong to own a human being, it's also wrong to kill a human being. Abortion is always the killing of an innocent human being. So it is completely unjustifiable, I would assume, on a Christian worldview. Talking about, there is more of them or less of them. They're all horrible and wrong and a stain upon this country. And neither side is really pro-life in any way. We both Republicans and Democrats this cycle agree on like 97% of all abortions. So it's a shame. Unfortunately, I have to vote for a side that agrees with mephistoprone, that agrees with 20-week bans, and blah, blah, blah. But at least they'll allow me to be an abolitionist in the state of Texas. At least Donald Trump will allow that, is what he says. So I'll take that. But there was the third question was something like pro-family. I think in every way the left is anti-family, it's anti-human, it's anti-child. From abortion to euthanasia to the mutilation of children through transgender, through the LGBT lobby, which is fundamentally against, procreation. Basically, government is mother and father to the left, and what we believe in subsidiarity or the other fancy ways we talk about these sort of things are, that there's a moral framework that we as individuals should live out, that we should be free to live that out, and we are fundamentally responsible for ourselves and for our families. It's not the government's job to raise your children or to provide housing for you or to do whatever. That is your responsibility. And the fact that you talk about the Overton window and how far it has shifted. Now it's just assumed by both parties that it's basically the government's job to take care of you. Sorry, it's not. That's your responsibility. Now, can we help one another in Christian charity and Christian love? Of course. But the third question was about pro this and pro that. We don't have time to go through every policy, and I've talked too long, but yeah.
All right, so I think family's a good thing.
Of course.
And yeah, of course. And I think the Democratic Party really is pro-family. We're the party that supports a living wage for working people, paid time off so that parents can raise their kids instead of having the video games raise their kids. When Donald Trump was president, he made it harder for people to get overtime pay, making it easier for companies to have their workers work more overtime without just compensation. That meant that less fathers got to go home to their sons, less mothers got to go home to their daughters in the middle of the night, or in the evening. I remember when I was a kid, my dad was a pipe fitter, and the job site wasn't always safe. And there were times when instead of him coming home, we got a call that said he was in the hospital. And, we would have to go to the hospital, and it turns out that he almost had his finger cut off or something in some kind of machine. Democrats support laws that make job sites safe so that families can spend time together. Joe Biden tried to put a policy in place to make it to where if you came to this country when you were young and you're undocumented, but you're married to someone who's a citizen, you would be able to stay in the country. But Ken Paxton, the Republican Attorney General, basically got that killed. So Republicans are trying to separate families because of legal status. And, I think we should let families stay together. So I think we're big supporters of family.
Doug, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, there's a lot of good truth said up here. I think the Republican Party doesn't know what to do now that they sort of got their way on the federal level, and they aren't going to do the kinds of things that are better for human flourishing and to be truly pro-family, which is not to simply make the employers just give them more money or give them more pay or cover the Kamala Harris isn't going to give them 6 weeks paid vacation or paid maternity leave. She's forcing other people to do it, right? So that's not necessarily pro-family. Sure, we can encourage those things through other means. That doesn't have to be through the state. So I would fall on what they were saying about, I forget which one of you said that, the government is not your mom, it's not your dad, which is, in many ways a fundamental libertarian insight that we have is the government is not there to take care of you. It might have its own roles in certain ways, but we're not there to seek it out for human flourishing in and of itself.
Okay, well, dang, we covered abortion. Here we go. There were several questions about this. I'm not going to ask them all, but the question was about the 2020 election. Do you think Trump lost the 2020 election? And do you think, wow, you guys are such an easy audience. And do you think he tried to overturn it when/if he lost? Other people asked about January 6th. So maybe we can just put that all together in election fraud / the insurrection. Thoughts? Listen, if they're going to talk about it at every debate, we're going to talk about it.
I have no
guess.
respect for somebody who thinks that it's an insurrection when they start off that way. I have read so many people discuss what happened on January 6th as like Trump tried to take over this insurrection, all these like really bombastic words. And the ones that I respect are the ones who say that there were things going on that were like a riot. It was like using like legitimate terms to describe what was happening without casting judgment on like what Trump was trying to do behind the scenes. It's been just so I'm at a loss for words to describe what has happened over the January 6th conversation is to like tell the American people that like there was this big thing that happened that probably really was just kind of like a really lame insurrection when they let you walk through and they escort you through. So, yeah, like and take pictures. That's pretty lame.
And they had no guns. There's nothing. Yes. So every January 6th, there's this process by which the electors are counted. It happens every January 6th. It's going to happen in a few more months. And basically what the plan was, there was a whole plan, which I won't go into great detail, but basically the plan was to ask for a stay where there would be time to look at some of the voting abnormalities in a handful of states, including Georgia. And that was what people wanted to have happen. And arguably the riot interrupted that process, by which there would have been 24 hours of debate on trying to get some of these states, looked at again. Do I think it was stolen? Yes, I think it was. I think that if you look at the truly bizarre abnormalities of stopping counting on election night, of all these mail-in ballots that came in, many of which weren't folded. I know it sounds conspiratorial, but yeah, I think if you look at the fact that the Hunter Biden laptop was suppressed, we all know that that was true. We know that 51 intelligence agents lied to us about that. I think if you look at the influence of Google, I can't remember his name, Epstein, not Jeffrey, Robert Epstein, I think, is an expert. He has said that the way Google openly manipulates, encourages their Democrat users to vote on election day and not Republican. There's a lot of data out there that says there's a lot of manipulation and a lot of lying. And yes, I think that given that you're talking about a handful of ballots in a handful of states, and the fact that there are ballot-producing machines, that is human beings who are paid to produce fake ballots on voter rolls that are never cleaned, yes, cheating was quite easy, and it definitely happened.
So I'm not gonna. I actually very intentionally wanted to avoid talking about January 6th. We all saw the news. We all saw what happened. You've made up your mind about what that was, one way or the other. I don't think we're gonna change any minds tonight. In terms of voting and election fraud, yeah, I think that Trump lost the election. These instances where there seem to be sketchy things going on with ballot counting, there were lawsuits, there were investigations. None of them were proven to be credible. And you might think that like, oh, well, all the justice system is corrupt and, they knew that something was stolen and they covered it up. At that point, we have much bigger problems. And we do have on record Trump asking, who was it, the governor of Georgia, to come up with 11,000 more votes for him. Fox News lost a lawsuit because they were claiming that these voting machines...
Settled. They didn't lose, they settled.
Settled a lawsuit that...
It's a difference.
I mean, it is.
We're not doing a mockery thing, right?
I'm just not sure why you would settle if you were like definitely in the right in that situation. But we have mountains of evidence that there was no voter fraud. Mail-in ballots always come in late. That is just the nature of mail-in ballots. And yeah, I think that Trump lost the election. I don't think that there was any kind of widespread voter fraud. And as for January 6th, like I said, you all saw what you saw. You believe what you believe.
That's solid. Austin, somebody from the audience wanted specifically to hear if you had a thought on this.
Oh, okay. I will say, in large scale, I find it interesting that any of us have a definitive opinion on this, given the fact that the way that we digest knowledge and the way that knowledge is filtered to us now almost makes it impossible for us to know whether anything is real. right? We don't know anymore. We are in this post-truth society. I mean, you see it. Look at October 7th. There was stuff with seemingly video evidence on either side that comes to be untrue. I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know if we are ever, if there is a conspiracy, we're never going to have access to that sort of information. If there was not a conspiracy, then we're also never going to have access to that information. So what do I know? What have I seen? I have seen, number one, videos of Capitol Police firing bullets and tear gas into peacefully protesting American citizens. I would probably be pretty angry too if that were happening, right? If my government were exercising physical violence on me when I'm using my First Amendment rights. What have I seen? I have seen, leading up to this election, a lot of people trying to implement laws blocking election integrity legislation. Right? No, we don't want to clear these voter rolls. No, we don't want to make sure that the election has any more integrity. That's incredibly suspicious to me. I don't know. And I want to resist this tendency that all of us automatically have to have an opinion on everything that we see and hear nowadays, because we're just not in a position to know that. If you ask me probability, I'm probably 50-50. Okay. I would love to believe that our government has not reached that level. But I've also seen some pretty weird things. I am going to move us on because, y'all, these questions. I mean, they're great. They're really good questions. I'm sad we won't get them all. This one says, for Austin, but I want to hear from everybody, or not everybody, a couple of y'all. You say you don't trust Harris's campaign promises because she, quote, blatantly lies on many planks. How do you come to believe, quote, every single plank on Trump's column with no hesitations? That's a great question.
Yeah.
So as I noted in the talk, I come to believe the planks in Trump's column not because I have no hesitation. I mean, it's valid. Like, Trump is a fallen human being. He's not a Christian as far as I know. There's no reason to think that Trump can't pragmatically manipulate people in the way that the Democratic Party can. But he was president for 4 years, and he did a pretty good job of implementing the policies that I wanted him to implement then. And so it seems reasonable to assume that he will do so again, especially given the fact that the people that are advising him now, I have a lot more trust for than any of the people that were advising him then. But I'm not accepting it uncritically. I'm not. I'm accepting it with reasonable assurances based on prior evidence.
Okay, well, let's move on. Several questions came in, so instead of asking them all, I'm just going to throw it out there. One of the questions was actually something about if Kamala wins, will Muslim countries respect her because she's a woman, which I thought was interesting. But overall, the questions are about what's happening in the Middle East right now. Do you want to weigh in on your thoughts about, given whoever you're voting for, and their thoughts about Israel, Palestine, and all of that?
I talked last time. You got it.
I can start.
Great.
Get it started. Both the red and the blue teams are pro-war parties. It's very clear now that the Democratic Party is a pro-war party. That used to not be the case. It's a little baffling that if you would have told me 20 years ago that the Democrats would be basically. Thank you. I'm so glad you said that. If you didn't hear it for the cameras, he's endorsed by Dick Cheney. That is worse than saying, hey, look, we have somebody across the aisle. It's like, no, that's not better. That's actually worse. It's terrible. And if Dick Cheney's endorsement is probably the best reason not to vote for Kamala Harris, to be honest. I'm not kidding. Seriously, it is. We can talk about all these domestic stuff, but do we want World War III? Because the Democratic Party doesn't seem to care that we're still funding more and more and more to fight Russia in a proxy war. And I'm not super confident in Trump per se, but marginally better there. And so, I mean, I'll throw you that bone. Maybe another one if we ever end up talking about it. But both parties are pro-war. As a libertarian, we are against non-aggression. I mean, this is kind of like the bare bones thing, right? And to be against war is just kind of that just comes with the territory. And we're super anti-war. In fact, the anti-war movement during the Obama years was carried mostly by libertarians.
Just real quick though, like when we had the last voting for Ukraine, I think 90 Republicans in the House voted against it, and every single Democrat voted for it, and like half the Republicans voted for it. So you say red and blue, both parties are for it. Well, yes, but there is a movement within the Republican Party led largely by Donald Trump. This is why I would defend him and his person, not just his policies. I don't think you can have Trumpism without Trump. DeSantis tried it. One day maybe J.D. Vance will try it. I don't think it's possible. It takes a certain will, it takes a certain stubbornness, it takes a certain moxie, it takes a certain I don't care. These are what I think are important. And so I will defend him in that regard. But Republicans, I think, are becoming the anti-war party because of him. When he stood on the stage and humiliated the Bushes, I could not believe he did that, and I hated him for it because I loved the Bushes, because I thought the Bushes were great, okay, because I was stupid. And now, and so now I see. He was right. He humiliated George Bush to his face with his brother right there on the stage. And a lot of Democrats, I think, eventually came around to Trump because they're like, oh, I get it. You can, and so it is weird that this is something I really want to say. Like the Democrat Party has become the big tech, big war, big pharma, big bank, big insurance, big money, big academy. Name an institution that is not wholly owned by the Democrat Party, by the left.
Twitter.
Yeah. And at great, at least in terms of stock value, at great personal cost to Elon Musk. He way overpaid for it, and the only reason he got it is because the SEC basically says when a publicly traded company is offered an amount of money, that's the value of it, you have to take it. And so he lost money on that transition. That's that deal, and that's the only reason we have that free speech at all.
And again, the question, and I mean, I love all this about war, but I want to get off the generalities of war and onto the Israel-Palestine.
There is a plank in Donald Trump's platform on his official website where he says we are going to deport Hamas terrorists.
Ooh, wait, since you said that, let me just throw this question in the mix because someone just sent this in and it's just about that. It says, do we think it's fair to deport pro-Hamas radicals if we have people all over this country that are pro-terrorist groups as well, when instead we could evaluate the posture behind the war? Israel is no longer the savior's nation. Yikes. We, the church, are the nation of Israel. Just add that to the mix. Okay, go.
Hey, Paul, you want to talk about this?
Keep going. No.
So quickly, no. Terrorists are terrorists, and you need to prosecute terrorists. Period. I don't care if they're Nazis. I don't care if they're Hamas. But if they are committing violence against people, then they need to be prosecuted and held to account. I really don't see why we have people claiming to be wanting to participate in the United States process and burning American flags and calling us the terrorist nation. I just don't understand that. I don't think that the Middle East can be solved up here in 3 minutes.
I haven't spoken yet, though.
Yeah, okay, that's true. But I do know that there is one party that basically took a Taliban leader to Camp David, showed him a picture of his own house, and said there will be no more attacks on American citizens, and then it worked, right? Like there were things that were happening when Donald Trump was pursuing this peace through strength proposal. I think that's the issue. Is Donald Trump is not pro-war. Donald Trump is pro carrying the biggest stick in order to ensure that there is no war, and I think that's a difference.
Yeah. So on two issues. First of all, I've heard a lot of pro-war, anti-war. For me, it really depends on the war we're talking about, right? I would oppose the Vietnam War. I would support World War II. So I'm not pro-war or anti-war. To me, it depends on the specific war. On Israel, I think ultimately we need to find a two-state solution, but we're not going to figure that out here tonight. And then on the deporting the Hamas protesters or whatever it said, in the United States, we have freedom of speech, right? And here's the deal. Most of the people that I talk to who would be called Hamas protesters, they don't support Hamas. What they do is they go on the internet and they see videos of innocent people in Palestine, in Gaza, being bombed. And they say, that's not right. It wasn't right what happened to Israel either, but what's happening to these innocent Palestinians, not the terrorists, but the innocent people, children who are just sitting in their homes and then a bomb comes down on them. That's not right. And they're saying that we should not be sending American weapons to do that. And whether you agree with that or not, that's not the issue. The issue is that they have their right to freedom of speech in the United States of America. Just like any conservative person has their right to freedom of speech, any liberal person has their right to freedom of speech, these people protesting should have their right as well. I would never burn an American flag. I think that's the dumbest form of protest that you could ever have. But
that's why we love you, Cody.
Right. But assuming there's not a burn ban, that's a constitutional right under the First Amendment. It's not a protest I would support, but we have to have freedom of speech. And freedom of speech isn't just to protect the speech that we love. It's to protect the speech we hate and despise the most. Because if we don't protect the speech that we hate, one day we're going to lose the speech that we love.
I'm really glad to hear a Democrat say that. Does your candidate think that? Because she most certainly doesn't. Most of the Democrats are saying that the First Amendment is in the way of their agenda. You got John Kerry said it in a private meeting in the UN.
Hillary Clinton said it.
Hillary said it. Those are the two examples.
Yep.
Oh yeah, Tim Walz.
Who's actually on the ticket.
Yeah. Like that's a big issue for me. Who's going to protect my free speech? Who's going to protect the right that I agree you can burn a flag? It's protected. Yeah, it's dumb, whatever. But that's just my personal preference on whether that particular way of doing it is dumb. And so Kamala Harris is not going to protect our free speech. In fact, there is ample evidence, if you know where to look, that she's just the opposite, that it's in her way.
Okay, so first off, Democrats aren't the ones banning books in schools right now.
Let's talk about book bans.
I mean, we can get into that question. In terms of
can you pull up some of those books on your iPhone there?
All right. Josh, you take it, and then you guys can respond.
In terms of what's going on with Israel.
But Josh, you have the floor.
Here's the fact of the matter. Both candidates are committed to supporting the state of Israel because they are one of our biggest strategic allies in that region. I personally, I don't like what's going on in Palestine. I don't like that Israel is bombing hospitals, that they are killing journalists, that they are attacking aid convoys and refugee camps. I think a lot of the Israeli leadership has made statements about what is happening in Palestine that have led to international courts to bring charges of genocide against them. And I don't like that. I think that we can support our Jewish siblings and that we can also mourn the lives that are being lost right now and call for an end to the violence, for a ceasefire. But the fact of the matter is, no matter who is in office, America is going to continue to sell weapons to Israel because that is what is politically the most advantageous for them. And
Let me say something.
I think it's a moot point about who's in office when it comes to our support of Israel in terms of selling them weapons.
I am going to let other people respond. I just wanted to remind us we're doing something no one else in the world is doing tonight. Remember? We're all going to get along. So let's keep I like the woots and the yes, but let's keep the booze to a minimum, So I heard the book banning thing. Someone's got to come back on that. And then the Israel-Palestine thing. Anybody on that side want to?
So as an educator, at both the high school level and the university level, I think this is exactly what I'm talking about blatant disingenuity. I'm not accusing you of this, Josh, but this is a talking point, right? This is a talking point that people
This being what, the book banning?
Yes, that the Republicans are banning books. If you cannot, in a school board meeting, read or show the passages of the books that are attempting to be banned because you will be kicked out for being inappropriate, then they should not be in a public school library. This is where I'm concerned, actually, with Josh's talk about the Democrats are the party that are going to provide sex education and stuff like this. Because what sort of sex education are they providing?
I can tell you.
Please do.
So
This is 21 and up. We can go PG-13. It's fine. We're drinking beer. Let's go.
Okay, so we all got the talk in high school. I think we all know what that looks like, right? Typically, in terms of, hey, listen, I don't want to talk about this either, but here we are.
In third grade?
In terms of third grade, I can tell you the kind of sex education that they talk about at that level is purely in terms of what is consent, what is inappropriate for somebody to be doing to your body at that age. It is purely in terms of giving children enough information so that they can protect themselves, so that if something disgusting happens to them, they are able to communicate that to a trusted adult. It is not until later, when they are of the appropriate age, that they begin to discuss sex education in more detail, same way we all got.
I would love to believe that that is what is happening, but it is just not. That is not what's happening.
According to what?
Yeah, I think what we so here's what I'm looking at, and I see both two sides here, like the book banning. And so you have probably in a lot of places what could be we consider now is a separate question as to whether or not the school should be doing that part anyway, right? Yeah. Like, you know, but let's say you're right. That there are many schools out there that are like teaching age appropriate, like what is consent, like this is inappropriate if an adult approaches you a certain way. How do you like go to another adult that you trust and tell them that this happened, because that's a big important thing to teach kids how to do. Should be done by the parents. But let's say that that's all true. There's going to be bad actors in this situation. There's going to be rot in certain areas of the school system. And you are going to have people want to say, hey, there's these books being read to my child, and these are bad examples. This is a bad book to read to my child because it's very explicit and graphic, and then they're stopped at the PTO meeting from reading it, right? So you have your situation going on, and therefore it's called a book ban. And now we throw it over to the Republicans for saying, well, look at Republicans are banning books. And it's like, well, hold on here. There's more situations going on here that you guys are just lobbying over. So no, you can probably get all those books on Amazon. So they're not banned. If somebody wants to read them, they can. Whether or not they're actually in the particular library is sort of an age-appropriate choice. And so if we want to talk about age-appropriate sex education, well, let's talk about the fact that some of those books just shouldn't be able to be checked out by a third grader. Yeah, you're just both wrong.
Did anyone want to say?
What did I say that was wrong? I said that
you're right. I guess I shouldn't. I was just.
Yeah, I mean, I think we shouldn't have child pornography. I don't think that our tax money that goes to our public school systems should be funding child pornography. That's my opinion.
Amen. Okay, moving on. We didn't really get to Israel and Palestine, so maybe you have to come to the follow-up conversation for that. You can hear my thoughts on it, or you can go listen to the podcast. They're fiery. Okay. What does America's food supply look like moving forward under both candidates' policies? This is the main concern of inflation and burden on everyday Americans. Are we heading for a Venezuela economic situation under Harris-Walz? Do you want me to ask it again?
Okay, inflation is caused by the government printing money. So the fact that we spend $2 trillion more than we sort of raise in revenue through taxes is the problem. So to fund that, we have to keep printing money, and every time you print money, you dilute the dollar. So it's not that things are getting more expensive per se. It's that your dollar is worth less, and so things have the appearance of getting more expensive.
How much money was printed under Trump in 2020?
Way too much. I would agree. So that's a fair criticism. However, I would say that, for example, Elon Musk was just put out a tweet the other day. He's going to be the head of Department of Government Efficiency, and they're talking about balanced budgets and. I mean, he cut like 90% of Twitter, and it's still fine, right? So I'm actually hopeful that something like that could happen. But the inflation is in fact, Ken and I did a whole podcast where we talked about it.
Y'all should listen to that one. It's good.
Go back and listen to that. It's the whole money supply, and when we just sit around and talk, oh, my groceries are high, like that's just so superficial. We need to go deeper and like really talk about the systemic reform we need, in our money supply system and the Federal Reserve and all of that. What was the question?
Are we headed to be like Venezuela under Harris-Walz?
Actually, the food supply, actually, I love what like RFK Jr. has brought to the ticket. I think that is fascinating, like the Make America Healthy Again movement, and like the crap in our food, and the soil depletion, and the GMO, and the fertilizers. I mean, big ag. I mean, unfortunately, both parties are kind of like pro big ag, usually, because they have to win Iowa every primary season or something. But RFK went to the Harris campaign and he said, these are my concerns. Like, these are real concerns about chronic disease, about autism, about, fatty liver disease in kids that was, like, usually never happened, and now it's 1 in 3 kids. Would you help me do something about that? And she was like, not interested. So he teamed up with Trump, and Trump was all on board. And, I think that's very fascinating, very interesting.
That is not a pro-family stance.
What?
To want to feed our kids crap.
I agree
in
with
public
that.
schools. Oh, I know you're not saying that. I'm just bringing that
okay.
up because that's
Oh,
a
okay.
really. I would say that the RFK influence on Trump is probably one positive direction. He has some kooky ideas about a lot of things or some things, and that's fair. But the whole health thing, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Or wait, did I say that the wrong way? No,
Cody,
I said it right. Yeah.
just real quick, and then
Yeah.
we're moving on.
So
All right.
no, I think that's good. Sorry.
Yeah, so I agree on the health stuff. If I remember right, though, it was that RFK wanted a cabinet position in exchange for his support, and Kamala wasn't it wasn't going to buy that. But as far as the food supply, right now there is basically a monopoly type situation. You've got like 4 beef packing industries. These are the middlemen that clog up the system. So you have these ranchers who are working hard, but they can't make enough money. And then we go to the store and we can't afford the beef. Where is the money going? There's this handful of monopolies in the middle. Where's the beef? And Kamala has a plan to break up these monopolies so that there's more competition among these middlemen, so that ranchers do better and consumers do better.
Okay, I know people want to disagree, but I'm going to try to get into some other social topics before we end, and we only have a few minutes left. I'm going to read 2 questions that both have to do with LGBTQ, IA plus stuff. If love is love, who are we to say individuals in the LGBTQ community can't love who they choose to love? Is it because their love doesn't appear, quote, right or, quote, just in our own flawed eyes? And another person says, how do I vote for Trump and, as a Christian, confidently vocalize that to my gay sibling? So we're talking about LGBTQ rights and how to confidently vote for Trump with a gay sibling. Evan? Someone pass it to Evan.
Trump is actually very pro-LGBTQ, actually. But I don't think pride flags should be hung from the White House when the American flag was displaced. Or a school classroom. But we did a whole episode on this issue not that long ago, so I think we could just revisit that. It was a
live event that we put out on the podcast.
Love is a tautology. It's a meaningless phrase. God is love, or you could say something, but it doesn't mean anything. So you have to have an object to love. You have to have love is part of a beautiful design. It's not just some abstraction. So to say something that is meaningless and then say, how does this make sense? Well, you can't make sense of it. Love has to be, love exists within God's world. It's an ethical question. It's a question of law. It's a question of revelation. So anyway, so you can't start with the premise of, since love is love, that's a faulty premise. We have to do better, I would say.
Yeah, so if marriage was just something for the church, I would totally agree with a lot of this, right? But it's also something with the government. It's about hospital visitation. It's about insurance benefits. It's all these other legal things. And I don't think that we have a right to say, oh, the way that you want to live goes against my understanding of the world, and so I'm going to take away your freedom to live how you want, unless you're hurting other people, right? And so when it comes to those benefits, I think those people should be able to get those benefits, to see the person that they live with in the hospital and that sort of thing. And we shouldn't take, and especially now that we've already legalized same-sex marriage, I don't think we should force all these people, many who have adopted kids, to get divorced. I don't know that that would be the pro-family thing either.
Let me slide another thing into this. A couple of people have asked just about the T from LGBTQ. The T. The questions are coming in about the things that Trump has said about gender-affirming care for minors. Does anybody want to comment on that?
So, sure, and I will echo Evan.
Oh, you're blocking the mic somehow.
I will echo Evan to say nobody in the world actually believes that love is love. It would be an absurd statement to say that the love that I have for my dog is the same as the love that I have for my wife, is the same as the love that I have for my brother. Those are all different types of love, and they require different responses and different restrictions. So that's it. It's a meaningless statement. And in fact, it does more harm than good. But regardless of whether we're Christian or not, Cody, I think as Christians, we do believe that God has a particular telos or design for the world. And God has instituted marriage both for Christians and for non-Christians. And God has told us what is the best way of, to use C.S. Lewis's phrase, running the human machine. So that is why we see when you depart from natural law, you have lower life expectancy, you have more disease, you have higher divorce rates, you have more dysfunction, you have all sorts of things that come as a result of trying to have the government redefine what a fundamental life term means, like marriage. I don't think the government has the right to redefine what words mean. And in fact, much like this question that we get to in the T part of the answer, what is a woman? When you withdraw the natural law from the realm of that answer, you don't actually have any sort of answer at all. And when you withdraw the Christian natural law perspective of marriage is a lifelong union between a man and a woman for the purpose of producing a family, you can't actually define marriage either, if you think about it. Now, in terms of the transgender lobby, every person is made in the image of God. Right, so what I want to resist is the dehumanizing language that we often see towards this particular people group. But my wife has been in a locker room with a man. Okay, I'm not comfortable with that. My wife is 4 feet tall. This man is clearly, visibly, mentally ill, and she is in a confined space with him because whatever her gym says that it's okay, and because the government says it's okay. I'm not being loving to my wife, and I'm not defending my wife or any other children if I'm going to say that we should continue to advocate for this. I would encourage everybody to read the book Lost in Trans Nation, which is by a Jewish psychiatrist, Miriam Grossman. And whatever you think is going on with transgender surgery for minors, it is worse than what you think it is. And I don't say that as hyperbole, because I thought it was pretty dang bad, but it is worse. And again, what is the most loving thing to do for my neighbor? It is not that.
Okay, quick reply, and then we're going to do our last question for everyone. Sorry, time is flying.
Okay, so, oh man, there's a lot to, I'm going to stick purely with policies. We live in a free nation where I think that we do not get to decide if two people want to get married, and we disagree with that. I don't think that is our right in a free nation to ban them from that. In terms
Already
of,
begged the question.
In terms of transgender issues, here's the thing. When we're talking about surgeries for children, that is a slim minority of gender-affirming care for children. The vast majority of it is hormone therapy, right? Which is a totally routine procedure that lots of straight people get all the time. It is reversible. The only thing that is not reversible is for men, they might have slightly lower bone density, but that can be treated through calcium supplements. The entire process has to have parental consent. At the end of the day, they go through multiple rounds of consultations with medical professionals, mental health professionals. Parents have to be involved at every step of the way. The most that 99.99%
None of those have
of
agendas,
doctors,
right?
What's that?
None of those people have agendas, right?
I mean, sure, if you want to believe that, you can.
I mean, what's going on in the United Kingdom and in Europe right now?
It doesn't affect any of us. It's not our business.
It affects me. My wife is in the room with that person.
Okay, then solve that particular issue. If somebody has gender dysphoria and they choose, it is their right in a free country to treat that condition in whatever way they believe is best. There is absolutely no evidence to suggest that trans people are more dangerous for women. There is absolutely no evidence to suggest that they are predators or groomers or anything like that. We do not get to decide how somebody chooses to pursue medical treatment for themselves in this country.
Again, I encourage everybody.
Especially when it is more effective at reducing rates of suicide and depression than antidepressants.
It's not. I encourage everybody to read the reports that are coming out of the United Kingdom who are ahead of us in this. to see the reports that are being put out in terms of rates of criminality and imprisonment, rates of suicide, whether they increase or decrease. This is data-driven stuff. Look, the United Kingdom is far more progressive than we are here in the United States. Sweden is coming out saying this is harmful, okay? If Sweden is saying it is harmful, it is not because they're trying to incorporate some conservative agenda.
Okay, go read. All of these guys are going to be around afterwards to pepper them with questions, yes? Or someone going to try to escape real fast? If you need to escape, you can. But okay, so I'm going to try to squeeze one last question in and I want each of you to answer, but briefly. Ooh, this is going to be tough. I want you to think of what you think is the largest problem facing America in the next 4 years and how your candidate intends to solve or address it. So basically pick one thing that you're worried about or you're looking forward to if your candidate wins in the next 4 years. What is that issue? What are they going to do? A last thought quickly.
So I think one of our biggest issues is income inequality. From the 1930s to the 1970s, we had this solved pretty well. We put higher taxes on the rich, we had labor unions, and we invested that money in the working class. And we made sure the working class had an opportunity and that the decks weren't stacked against the working people. Roosevelt put these policies in place, and both Democrats and Republicans kept these until the 1970s. And then in 1980, Ronald Reagan got elected, and he changed everything. And he got rid of all these Roosevelt New Deal programs and basically started stacking the deck against the working people. And ever since around 2016, the Democratic Party has been moving back to those Roosevelt policies in order to bring back the policies that protect the middle class. And my hope is that we can get back to that point and have a strong, thriving middle class like we did in the 1950s.
That's great.
I actually completely agree with what you said. That was going to be my answer. Especially, just to add on to it, especially in the past couple of decades, we have seen consolidation of companies into these monopolies and oligopolies. Did I say that right? That allows them to collude in fixing prices and all this other stuff. Biden and Harris, as I said during my speech, have been the most antitrust, pro-union administration that we have seen since before Reagan. And my hope is that if Harris gets elected, she will continue to break up these trusts so that the free market can do what it does, bring prices down, and give more power to the average worker so that they can have some say in the conditions of their work, their salary, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, you got that.
Yeah, somehow I didn't have to pass the mic. I think the biggest concern for me is who is going to uphold the values of Western civilization the best. And I'm not up here. Thank you. I'm not up here to defend a particular candidate. Obviously, this conversation is about over, and I haven't said anything about who I'm voting for.
You can now.
No, good. Because here's the thing, I know a lot of people really anguish over this. They don't want to vote for either, and there are other options. There's third-party options. There's just saying my conscience can't do this. I'm staying home, and I'm going to do something else with that hour or whatever time it takes to go and vote. You're endangering fewer people if you're not driving to the polls. So you could at least take that, right? No, I mentioned it earlier when I challenged you two about free speech. That's a huge one, and it's a very clear and present danger that if we lose that, the rest of it crumbles.
So this is an interesting question, and I tried to think of how I was going to respond to it. I could say a lot of different things, but I will repeat the fact that I do think that Donald Trump is the party of reform right now, which is weird to say for a conservative party, right? I think that the amount of federal overreach that we have right now is really troubling, and I want to see that dialed back. I want to see people taking seriously the concerns of people in the flyover states and that have different ways of life than the people in the big cities. I think the Electoral College is a great idea, and we need to keep it. I don't think that we need to continue on with this sort of mass popularization that the Democratic Party seems to want to implement. I'm also looking forward to things.
This is many things.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm done then.
Well, we have 2 minutes.
I'm tempted to say immigration, which is a huge deal, and the fixes for that are obvious. I'm also tempted to say inflation because that affects everybody, the poor the most. So if we're, as Christians, to care about the poor, well, inflation is a terrible thing for the poor. So harnessing the money supply is very important. Government spending is important. There are also huge cultural issues that politicians really don't have anything to do with. I think we should make pornography illegal, for example, which is destroying people, destroying families. So the whole social, making marijuana legal is like a major platform for Commonwealth. I think that's insane. But I would say that if RFK Jr. is right, if you haven't heard his elevator speech about health and chronic health issues, you really owe it to yourself to listen to it. If it is true, if the autism rates are really have exponentially increased the way he has, fatty liver disease, anti-immune or autoimmune diseases, allergies, if these are caused by the childhood vaccine schedule, if they are caused by the food supply, if they are caused by chemicals in our food, that is obviously the most important issue because children do not deserve to be treated this way. We should be protecting children, and instead we are poisoning them on the daily. They just come out and said fluoride is bad. So I think that those Make America Healthy Again issues, I think, would have to be the most important, and only one candidate is promising to do anything about any of that.
Okay, can we give these guys a hand for, yeah. As always, I love coming up while the applause is still going, so I'd be like, oh my gosh, thank you. Okay, just a couple quick announcements. Mark, where are you going? No, I'm joking. Okay, couple quick announcements. October 29th, of course, if we want to do this again with a whole different cast of players, check that out. November 12th, we're talking about gender and identity. That's going to be juicy. December 10th is a Ask Us Anything. So it's going to be all people from our leadership team. We're not asking any guest speakers to come in that night, and you can just pepper them with all the questions that you have. A couple other things. We have an outreach team that's just a few folks that really like talking to people that have questions about faith, religion, the Bible, God, life, love, everything. So if you're here and you're like, oh, I've got some questions, if just quick show of hands or maybe stand up if you're on the on the outreach team. So Josh back there, we've got Jason, we've got Hugo over here, Mace, Evan, and of course myself. Obviously you can come talk to any of the leadership, but those people all, should have a white badge. But anyway, come and talk to those people. You can also just text. You have my number. Text me. If you ever want to go grab coffee and talk about this kind of stuff with me or anybody on the leadership team, I can put you in touch with them. Listen to the podcast. And then I will just say one last thing, which is just by either applause or show of hands, do you feel like tonight you were able to question freely, think deeply, and drink a little? Do you feel like you were able to do that? Okay. If you want us to be able to keep doing events like this, we need your support. We are a nonprofit 501c3, and so we rely entirely on your support to do that. So if you feel so led, give, donate. It can be a little, it can be a lot. All of that information is on theologybythepint.org, but really consider if you want to help this continue. So, Mace, will you pray us out?
Father, we thank you for this opportunity to gather tonight. We thank you for all the people that made it possible, Heights Church for hosting us, Sarah and the leadership team, and the volunteers for putting it on. We thank you for the people on the panel and our speakers tonight being willing to wade into some controversial waters and just share their thoughts. And I pray that you would use this night to guide all of us as we head to the polls or not, whatever our consciences lead us to do. I ask that you would give us wisdom and grace, and that we would preserve the unity that we have in the body of Christ for those of us who follow you. And last but not least, Lord, we ask that we would all have peace in our hearts, knowing that Jesus is Lord now and will be Lord for forever, even after this election, whoever gets installed into office, Lord, that we can rest in that, knowing that you are in control. And so we ask that you would use this time to those ends, and we ask this all in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Thank you. Would you take our picture for us? I'm asking girl because girls are better. Hey, guys, no, wait. Sit down. I want to take a picture real fast. Taking